740 KVOR.
Hi, this is Ambassador John Bolton, and you're listening to Tron.
Back we are on Mother's Day on 740 KVOR. Our phone number, 719-540-0740. All things Tron will be found at tronshow.com, of course. Oh, how enlightened you'll be. I'd like to talk to our good friend Tom Harris. I love talking to this guy because he is definitely enlightened, and he's got a story at the Daily Caller about the Paris climate agreement. It's coming up. Tom Harris joins us now on 740 KVOR. Tom, how are you?
Hey, pretty good. How are you, Tron?
I'm really good, actually. You catch up, man. It's Mother's Day. We're all happy out down here, I got to tell you.
Yeah, I miss my mom. I mean, she died a couple of years ago, and, you know, she had Parkinson's disease, so that wasn't a great ending, that's for sure.
Tough.
But she was a wonderful person. She taught me how to play guitar, and I'm actually going back. Yeah, I'm going back to play at her nursing home, actually, in a couple of hours.
That is neat. That's really great.
Nice. And I'm playing her guitar, so that's pretty fun.
That's really, I love hearing stuff like this, man. That's very human. See, we're not just voices. We're humans, aren't we?
Oh, yeah.
By the way, you need to know that Tom is the executive director of the International Climate Science Coalition. So what about this Paris Agreement? And you did write a story over at Daily Caller. The decision has not yet been made, and I understand we got Ivanka and Jared Kushner in there somehow trying to disassemble the whole idea of tearing up this agreement. I think it should be torn up and thrown away because it's just silly to me. But I'm going to defer to you. You're the expert. What do you got?
Well, I mean, I think we really have to get out of it because, in fact, you know, it's interesting that the previous special assistant to former President Obama, he was a key architect of the U.S.-China deal. He said that the Paris Agreement puts the U.S. on an equal footing with China and India and the rest of the developing world. Well, take a look at the targets in the Paris Agreement. And if you ask people if this is an equal footing, I think you'll just hear a laugh. Basically, the U.S. agreed to reduce emissions by 26 to 28% below its 2005 levels by 2025. Okay, that's a pretty significant target, a reduction. Right. But the Chinese, they agreed to continue increasing their CO2 emissions until about 2030. Yes, and if you actually look at their expected economic growth and other factors, their target translates into a 70% increase above its 2005 levels by 2025. So that hardly sounds like an equal footing. So even if you did believe that we were the master controllers of climate, which of course is ridiculous. The fact is, if the biggest emitter in the world, which is China now, China is by far the largest emitter, they're allowed to increase their emissions till 2030. I mean, what kind of a deal is that?
It's perhaps not as dangerous as the Iran deal, but it's a dumb deal. It makes no sense at all. It's politics. They're playing games. I'm sure there's lots of crony capitalism going on. And again, I will say this until I die. Man-made global warming is not a crisis. Again, Tom, I was a child when they came out with this thing. The Earth is freezing, 1977 or whatever it was. And then they changed the whole thing and they went for something else. Oh, the Earth is boiling, it's burning, here comes Al Gore, Mr. Carbon Footprint himself. Yeah,
and the funny thing, Tron, is if you actually look at the amount that it's gotten warmer or gotten colder in these different time periods, it's so small you wouldn't even feel it in a room if the temperature changed by that much. I mean, if you go back, last year they said was the hottest year on record. I mean, it broke the record by something like 7/100ths of a degree. Okay,
I know.
So I mean, and of course the uncertainty is much bigger than the amount by which it broke the record. So of course we don't know. It might actually have gotten colder. Oh well, it's a disaster, that's for sure. And we have to look at the real world, not these computer model forecasts of the future. And we have to ask ourselves, well, what happened in the past, in the history of the Earth, when you go back millions of years, when carbon dioxide was much higher? And what you find is there were times when carbon dioxide was 13 times today's level. In other words, not the measly 40% rise we've seen in the last century, but a 1,300% rise. And the Earth at that time, that was 440 million years ago, that was the coldest period in the whole last 500 million years. And at other times it was hot when it was high CO2. At other times it was in the middle. It's all over the board. So there really doesn't seem to be in the history of the Earth, and that's what really matters. What does the Earth really do when CO2 rises? there is no correlation. There doesn't seem to be any indication that carbon dioxide is the cause of serious problems at all. And there is a lot of indication, of course, that rising CO2 increases plant growth.
Exactly.
And and we've seen that over the last century.
Tom, you and I have talked about this so
dollars.
many times. Tom, you and I talked about this when I was in third grade. Our teachers were teaching this to us in science class. And then we went into high school. It was the same thing. The plants breathe in what we breathe out, and then they make oxygen for us. It's very simple. It's the way it works. That's how God made it.
Yeah, exactly. Carbon dioxide is not carbon pollution.
No.
Carbon pollution is a term used by the extreme left to make it sound like this is dirty, like soot or carbon. It's not. It's actually benign. It's plant food. They purposely put CO2 into greenhouses to increase the level far beyond atmospheric levels because the plants grow faster. And, it's interesting that there is no warming in the greenhouse because of CO2.
Right.
The warming is because the solid roof of the greenhouse prevents convective currents from taking the heat away. So it's actually quite interesting that the whole idea that the atmosphere operates like a greenhouse is simply not true. That's just another one of the myths that, we see out there that's unfortunately causing us to waste $1 billion a day.
Stupid.
$1 billion a day. Yeah, it's crazy.
We're talking to the executive director of the International Climate Science Coalition. His name is Tom Harris. And yes, we have this the Paris Climate Agreement. We have to deal with this. I know that Donald Trump, I guess he put it on hold for now, right? A delayed decision so far.
I think he's testing the waters because, just a couple of days ago, the U.S. just signed this Fairbanks Declaration of the 10th Ministerial Meeting of the Arctic Council, and I have it on the screen in front of me. Tillerson signed this.
Yes, he did.
And in it, they're actually supporting the climate scare. So I think what's going on is they're testing the waters. They'll make a statement on one side and then a statement on the other side. They're going to see, how is the reaction? What's going on here? And I think it's highly political now. I think Trump doesn't believe the climate scare, but sadly, he might go back to supporting it because you remember it was only about 8 years ago, he signed a letter supporting the climate scare to President Obama. So we could see a switch back again.
Well, that's exactly right, Tom. And the thing is this is one of the things that was pretty much heard every rally he was at. Talking about the climate, the Paris Agreement. Everybody remembers those who went to the rallies, those who heard them on TV and so forth. He was against it. He said he was going to deal with it, tear it up, whatever the words he used exactly. I don't know what they are. But again, it's very political, and I understand the establishment gets their fingernails into our new leadership, and they want things to go their way because of crony capitalism. I really do believe this. I know it's true. Businesses do well with this sort of fraud that's going on, and I believe it's fraud. You just explained it. You just explained the science of it. Now, I've got to ask this question. It bears repeating. What about these 97% of scientists, Tom, that say that we are under a man-made global warming situation? Who are these people, Tom? I don't know these names.
Well, the fact is they never ask the right question. I mean, they ask them, do you think there's climate change? 100% of scientists agree. Do you think that humans contribute to climate change? 100% of scientists agree. Do you think that we're the major cause of the climate change in the last century? Well, maybe a lot of scientists agree to that. I'm dubious about it. But even if that were true, even if it were true that 100% of scientists thought that we caused most of the climate change in the last century, I would answer, so what? Because in the last century, the temperature of the Earth, averaged over all these areas, rose only 1.5 degrees. Okay,
right.
So if we cause most of a very small amount of warming, I say, so what? All that matters is, are we going to cause dangerous climate change in the future? Because the past is past. We can't change it.
Right.
And you know what, Tron? There's never been a poll asking scientists, do you think that we will cause dangerous climate change in the future? They don't ask that question. And the reason they don't is because most scientists will say, I don't know.
Right. No.
Because, of course, they don't know. How could they know? I mean, it hasn't happened yet, first of all, and the climate models are not working. The ones that we use to forecast future climate, if you go back in the past 50 years and you plug in the conditions then and you plug in what changed and what happened and how CO2 rose, we don't get today's conditions. And we see this all over the Internet, scientists saying, this climate model isn't working. Oh, but we're going to use it to forecast policy-based decision.
Of course.
I mean, it's ridiculous.
It is
Doesn't make any
ridiculous.
sense at all.
Tom, and then, of course, I remember the climate emails, that little thing that came out a few years back where they were, fudging the numbers to make it look, all of that sort of thing. But also, and the sad thing, and perhaps scary in a way, these kids out there, these millennials out there, they're getting sold a bill of goods on this stuff. They're believing this indoctrination. So people really need to do their homework, right? It's an individual responsibility.
Yes, exactly. And they have to realize that of that $1 billion a day, only 6% of it goes to helping real people now who are affected by extreme weather and climate change, which is probably mostly natural. The UN wanted a 50-50 split, but the big money is to be made in trying to stop climate change with wind turbines and carbon credit trading, helping people boots on the ground, wells and moving people into new areas. There's no money to be made there for big corporations. So you would think the left of all groups would realize that this is a hoax.
Tom Harris, I want people to go to your website, and early and often, where do they go?
They go to climatescienceinternational.org.
I appreciate you, man. Go play some guitar. I love it. God bless you, sir, and happy Mother's Day.
Okay, thanks, John.
All right, Tom, you take care. Tom Harris, very nice guy, smart guy, too. Got to repeat this stuff, There's so much ridiculous, blubbering propaganda out there, and we're here to resolve it and dissolve it. We're coming right back on 740 KVOR.